My name is Fred Moremi. I'm the managing partner for Centum Capital Partners. Centum Capital Partners is the private equity arm for Centum Group. So we are responsible for making all the investments by Centum into the private companies that Centum is invested in. We've been very active the last 10 years in particular, and have delivered a very good return for Centum in that time. In that time, we've invested in several companies across several sectors: financial services, consumer goods, manufacturing, lately education, agriculture as well. For this session, what I'd like to just speak about is GenAfrica, what was then known as Genesis Investment Management Limited. So looking at the original need for this business, they had grown principally from a research house where they're doing research for the parent company in London. They then began managing some funds, some third-party funds, some pension funds, and they actually did quite well. And the management of the third-party funds was actually incidental to what they were set up for the research. So as they continued to grow, the increasing risk that was being presented to the parent company was putting them in an uncomfortable position, so there was some constraint on their growth. And so when we came in, amongst the first things we did was identified what are the growth areas for this business, and how do we as the controlling shareholder support the business.
My name is Charles Ogallo. At GenAfrica, I'm in charge of product design, marketing, portfolio management, and building relationships for the company. Also, I'm part of the team that coordinates strategy in coordination with the directors of the company. Also, I'm in charge of all corporate affairs. GenAfrica Asset Managers, formerly known as Genesis Investment Management Limited, is the second largest asset management firm in the East African region, providing quality investment management services both in Kenya and Uganda, mainly to institutional investors. And the company was established back in 1996. Centum invested in GenAfrica back in the year 2013. It was a time when the industry was beginning to go through several changes. One such change was the compression of fees due to very severe and tough competition from competitors. At the same time, the major shareholder, Genesis Asset Managers London, had taken a conscious decision and strategy to close its affiliates, its small affiliates around the world. And Nairobi or Kenya was one such decision that was taken by the board to exit. We therefore went through a process of looking and marketing for a partner that would not only afford to buy the company, but also one that would bring in a strategic fit to the business. It was at that point that we sourced about 7 suitors for the business. We settled on one, but it didn't go through. So how does Centum come in?
The story of GenAfrica and our involvement with it goes back to 2013. I remember I was attending an investment conference, and at tea time a friend of mine mentioned to me that he had heard that Genesis was on sale, and that their major shareholder, who had the name Genesis, which was a UK-based asset management company, wanted to sell their stake. I think it was about 60-something%. It did not have much details.
We invested in this business in the year 2013, December 2013. It was interesting how the opportunity came to us. It's one of those opportunities that came to us at the 11th hour.
So I then tried to reach Charles, and I could not get a hold of him. I only got a hold of him at 4 in the evening. And we had some pleasantries, and then Charles told me, look, I think James, is a bit too late. We've been in this process for a while, and I thought you knew. I didn't know. And we're about to sign. In fact, we may be signing. The sellers are here to consider the offers. We are meeting tomorrow morning, and the board is being convened, and we are going to be signing with one of the buyers. So I said, okay. I think I want to put in my offer. And he said, I think it's a bit late, but why don't you talk to the seller himself? So he gave me the number of this gentleman. I called him, and I could not get a hold of him until around 7 p.m. So I introduced myself. I'm James Mori. I'm the CEO of Centum. I understand you're looking to sell your stake. I'm interested. And he listens and he says, oh, unfortunately, you're a bit too late. We've more or less concluded the process, and in fact, we'll be approving tomorrow. Now, I told him we are a very serious entity, even though I know you've not yet signed, so it's not too late. You can expect our offer by tomorrow morning when you convene. And my recommendation is that you take it very, very seriously. It's going to be a very serious offer. And what we put on the table, we are going to close. So he didn't know. He had never heard from me, and I also did not know him. We then sat down with the chairman of the investment committee of Centum. I managed to reach him at 9 p.m. at night. And we had a discussion, and I told him, I think this is, my view, this is an excellent investment opportunity. There are very few asset managers in the country of that scale. So it's not an asset you can come across at any other time. If this opportunity passes us, I think it's something we should go for. And my own sense is that we should be able to drive these assets under management to grow to a much higher level than they are today. We had about a 15-minute chat with Dr. Chris Kirubi, and he said, James, I agree with you, go for it. Put together a very comprehensive 7-page offer of what price we're offering. I think we offered about 1.3% of the then assets under management, so it was about 1.3 billion, and the value would bring into the business. Because we are buying shares from a growing shareholder. What would be different? The brand, the support would give them around geographical expansion, the product expansion capabilities, the governance, and that our acquisition of the business would be in the interest of the remaining shareholders, who are also members of management.
James Morian, the CEO, got privy to the sale through some of his associates and friends in the industry. One day before we signed up with another buyer or a preferred buyer, James or Centum approached us. The board went through a process of vetting, and the vetting process was really looking for somebody who would bring in a strategic fit, somebody who had a strong brand, somebody who was well known, somebody who had the networks in the industry, and that would add ultimate value to the business going forward.
So when they met at the board now, what was meant to be a confirmation of a sale to another party turned out to be a consideration of a totally new offer that had come just that morning, overnight. And that was from us. And at lunchtime, I received a call, and they said, James, we've accepted your offer. That was the following day. So it was slightly over 24 hours. So where the door was shut, it opened, and that's how we got in.
The transaction saw the exit of a multinational investor to a local investor. Centum was well established in the East African region, was a strong brand, and a company that knew and understood the business exceptionally well.
At the time when we were coming in, there was of course concern around the parent companies leaving, and we are managing people's money, which is quite sensitive, and the clients were asking, is our money safe? And a number of them were of course looking to withdraw to a more safe manager. But through interactions between management, ourselves as shareholder, just giving them assurance that even though the parent company you knew is leaving, you've got a strong local institutional partner coming in who is backing the management, and you're going to have a very smooth transition.
So within sort of a couple of months of our acquisition, we had a strategy we had all signed up on. We were working on the rebrand. We had strengthened the board. We had strengthened the risk function. We had addressed the internal audit function. So we had put in place, and also we had reassured the team. So we had no staff losses and also no client losses.
And so when we came in, amongst the first things we did was identified what are the growth areas for this business and how do we as the controlling shareholder support the business. And so they identified two primary areas for growth. One was geographical diversification. So it was principally a Kenyan business, and we're looking to grow out into the East African region. Second was product diversification. So they'd only been doing fund management, pension fund management, and they were looking to put out new products, property management, an income drawdown, where basically pensioners are able to invest their pension and then draw down income over time. They were also looking to do wealth management as well. So outside of pension and pensioners, also just private individuals looking to have their money or their wealth managed.
I also knew the team. We'd sat on the same board of CDSC with Charles Ogalo, who was the CEO and still, I think, is now the outgoing CEO of Genesis. He was at the time the CEO. We had been on the board in the CDSC with him. I'd been on the board of Muhasibu with Patrick Kariuki. I was two of their investment managers were my students in Strathmore when I was teaching CFA. This was Fahima Zain and Steve Wamadhai. So I knew the team relatively well. We had a good relationship. I had a good feeling about what we could do with that team in terms of growing the business. Genesis had a very good reputation as a very credible investment manager, very high levels of professionalism and integrity. And I thought, look, if Genesis is leaving, this is probably an interesting opportunity for us to look at.
Our coming in, our leaving has not been disruptive to the business. Actually, the business has been able to grow over that period. There's a fantastic management team we found there, headed by Charles Ogalo, who was the CEO at the time. We had Patrick Kariuki as well as the CEO, and that's a team that we worked with throughout our time there. So we didn't bring in new external management into the business. We worked with the same team because they already had the ideas. They knew what they wanted to do. They knew where they wanted the business to go, and ours was just to empower them, give them some wind in their sails, and really push them to move. So as far as the management was concerned, we had a very good relationship with them. We backed them in every decision as well.
I must give a lot of credit to the GenAfrica team because I did not have to be personally involved in their day-to-day management processes. The role we largely played was enabling them to succeed and having a wonderful alignment between the major shareholder, them as minority shareholders, and also as parties running the business. They also are parties of very high integrity and very high degree of professionalism. So we typically have breakfast with Charles, discuss the business, what's happening, what he's thinking about. And my role was to be more of a supporter to Charles and his team. And they did an incredible job. Within about 3 to 4 years, they had doubled their assets under management to close to 200 billion shillings.
Like I mentioned earlier, we didn't lose any clients through the process. We didn't even lose the management as well, because sometimes management is also tied to a certain brand, to a certain parent company. But throughout that process, just handling it with a lot of sensitivity, but also just showing that the opportunities were bigger. So we're moving from Genesis Kenyan company, to GenAfrica. We're now becoming an Africa vehicle. And I think that transition actually worked quite well.
The second how was then also geographical diversification for them to go to other markets. And we started off with Uganda, where we already have a presence. So supporting them to get into the Uganda market, getting members of the board for that business in Uganda to help them with the business development initiatives there. Then governance also, bringing independent members to the board of GenAfrica. We brought in Andrew Msangi and Kadri Nigade, and they were our representatives. We brought them in as independent board members. And the interesting thing is that even after we left, although they had been nominated by Centum, the management and even the incoming shareholder asked for them to remain as directors of the board. And when we exited, it has continued to be a strong business, and we've continued to have an excellent relationship with the team there. And so I think we accomplished our mission with GenAfrica. We found an organization that was good, and I think we played our role in making it great and positioned it to be an even better player in the market. By the time we left, we were probably number 2 in the market. And from a profitability point of view, they may have been the most profitable in the market.
So for us, we are constantly researching, constantly getting in touch with the market, just to hear what's going on. So that when an opportunity comes, we already have formed a view, even prior to the opportunity. So yes, the opportunities come to us, but not every opportunity that comes to us is either credible in terms of that the return is going to be generated, or two, that we might not be the right partner to come in and add value on an opportunity. In this case of GenAfrica, we could see that we could add value because we were here, we were local, we had a fairly good understanding of the risks, we could manage the risks here in the market, we could see the growth opportunities as well. And so we thought we were the right partner, and indeed the growth that we expected to see came through.